In this video, we're going to take a look at functions. So the first thing that we should probably talk about is what is a function? Well, a function is a special relationship between values. A special relationship between values. And now the important part here is that each input, each x value, has exactly one output, or one y value. So when we looked at relations earlier in the video, what we saw is that sometimes we can have one x value that has two different y values. So we had something in one of our mapping activities where we had something like a -3, and that value went to one value and it went to a second value. So when that happens, that would not be considered a function, because what would happen is in point form, we would have the point -3,1 and we would have the point -3,5. And so if we're trying to figure out if something is a function or not, if we're given ordered pairs, the x values cannot repeat. So if the x values repeat, then it's not a function. So if we were looking at those 2 points right there, that would not be a function because the x values repeat. Another way that we can test and see if something is a function is if we're looking at its graph, we can use what's called the vertical line test. So that's where you take a vertical line like your pencil or your finger, and if as you move the pencil, or if you move your finger or the vertical line, whatever you're using, as you move it across the graph, if it touches the graph more than once at any certain point, then it's not a function. And we'll take a look at exactly what that means in just a minute. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at a few things and try to determine whether or not they are functions. So if we're given ordered pairs, remember we said the way to check is if the x values repeat, then it's not a function. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scan through the points, and I'm going to look at my x values, and since none of my x values repeat, I can say that this is a function. If I take a look at number 2, if I scan through the x values, what I notice is that I have an x value of 2 here, and I also have an x value of 2 here. So because the x values repeat, that is not going to be a function. So I'll leave the next two, numbers 3 and 4, for you. You can look through those and see if you can determine if they are functions or not. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at tables of values. So the same thing happens with the table of values. As you're scanning through the x values, you're looking to see if you have any x values that repeat. And since we have a 3 here and we have a 3 here, the x values repeat, so this would not be a function. In number 6, as we scan through the x values, we have -4, -2, 1, 2, and 5. The x values do not repeat, so that would be a function. In number 9 and 10, with those, we're looking at a mapping. And so if we think about the points that we have here, we would have the point -3,0, we'd have the point -1,4, we'd have the point 2,7, and we'd have the point 4,4. So in those points, if I write them out here, -3,0, -1,4, 2,7, and 4,4, when I scan through, the x values do not repeat, so this would be a function. In number 10, if I look at the coordinates, I'd have -4,4, I'd have -1,0, I'd have -1,7, and right there my x values repeat, so that one would not be a function. Alright, for the last section, we're going to actually use what we call the vertical line test. So with this one, when you have a graph, when you have a picture or a visual, you can use the vertical line. As you scan your pencil across, if you hit the graph in more than one place at the same time, then it's not a function. So like right about here, I'm going to hit that. When I look at the graph, I'm going to hit those 2 points at the same time. If I examine those 2 points, that point right there and that point right there, their coordinates are 1, 2, and 1, -1. And if we go back to what we looked at with our ordered pairs, we said that if the x values repeat, then it's not a function. And so all the vertical line is doing is it is visually showing you where the x values are going to repeat. So if you hit the graph at more than one spot as you're scanning, then it would not be a function. Okay, number 12, as I scan across, at no point am I going to hit more than one point on the graph. So that one would be a function. All right, I'll leave number 13 up to you, but now let's take a look at 14. 14 is a continuous graph. We have arrows on both ends. As I scan my pencil, as I scan my vertical line across, all of a sudden, right about here, I'm starting to hit the graph in more than one spot. I'm hitting it on top, I'm hitting it on the bottom, and I keep hitting it in more than one spot for a little while. So because I'm hitting the graph in more than one spot, then it's not a function. The next one we have is this little line segment, and as I scan across, I'm not hitting the graph in more than one place, so that would be considered a function. And I'll leave 16 for you to think about. So at this point, we've taken a look at functions, we've taken a look at relations. So the next thing you're going to do is go into Math Excel and see if you can answer a couple